Welcome to the Foul Front Outdoors Waterfowl Podcast, where our goal is to recruit and educate new hunters while entertaining the rest of you. Without new hunters and the mentorship of those more seasoned, this passion as we know it faces an uncertain future. So get the word out, turn the volume up, and enjoy the show, because you're on the Foul Front. All right, well, today I've got Travis from Grip Pack Calls on today, and we're going to be talking to you all about duck calls and duck calling techniques. How you doing today, Travis?
Doing well. Thank you very much for having me on, Ben, and really appreciate y'all having me on here.
Oh, no, an absolute honor to have you here. Why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about Grip Pack Calls?
Right on. So I grew up hunting over here in the heart of the Eastern Flyway in the Chesapeake Bay area. And, I hunt all over the place with Grip Pack Calls. I'm the national brand manager of the company. Do a little bit of competition calling with them and filmed hunting coordinator. I tell you, the only title I don't have with GP Calls is owner. So whatever it is, as far as, grunt work, talking with the retail stores and helping make the calls, tune the calls, blow the calls. And, but yeah, I grew up hunting over here on the Potomac River and travel all over the country and hunt ducks, and geese, and whether it's, in my area, Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, or over in Illinois, Texas, up in Saskatchewan, Canada. I go up there every year to hunt in October. And so, yeah, just, like everybody else probably listening in on this podcast, started out waterfowl hunting and now ate up with it.
Yeah, absolutely. So what was your first duck you ever shot?
This is actually something that I always talk about when I'm guiding parties. With the outfitter over here is, people always say, oh yeah, so, this was my first duck, or, I shot a goose first, my first duck, and I'm dang proud of it, a hen bufflehead.
Wow, hen bufflehead. That's impressive because it's pretty hard to hit a Nolan Ryan fast pitch coming across the water.
I'm telling you, I think there was a saying back in the day, someone was asking about teal, how do you hit teal? And the guy goes, a long lead and a quick prayer. And I always said the buffleheads are the diver duck teal. So, yep. It's how far do I lead them? About 15 feet. And then they raise up and they're about 15 feet behind them. So I'm like, got to lead them more.
Got to lead them a little bit more. That's, that's funny that you talk about the, how far do you lead them? And it's always funny that a lot of times the first times I, take a guy out is during teal season. And they have a big shock when we switch over to big ducks, coming in a little bit slower or, a little bit larger, target presentation. And they always think it's a little bit easier. So,
yeah, absolutely. And it's all different. I mean, you go from the acrobatic, agile, elusive teal to, some September resident geese. And right. A lot of people think geese are slow, but they're actually going a lot faster than people think.
Yeah.
And you got big ducks, and then divers, they're, you're used to a mallard at 15 yards, backpedaling in the decoys where you can just put it right on them and crush them. Where a diver may be 15 yards in the decoys, but they're screaming through. So it's
right.
What do you mean I got to get 5 feet out in front of this bluebill? You better get 6 or 7.
Yeah, I know. I think I might have I've been shooting the same shotgun choke tube shell combo since I was like 12. And so I might have a little bit of an issue if I came out and hunted some divers with y'all. But, well, why don't you tell us just a little bit more about like Grip Pack and what y'all do and what y'all have to offer.
Right on. I appreciate it. So, yeah, Grip Pack Calls was started by Teddy Carr and his 2 sons, John Carr, his oldest, and Justin Carr, his younger son. And Teddy's, of course, always like that Godfather type right there, oversees the operation. All right. A lot of the executive decisions and stuff.
Sure.
Organizer. John Carr, the oldest, he's like the brains behind the promotion and, the ideas. And then you got Justin Carr, which we call him Juck. Everybody needs a Juck. And he's the brains behind the designing of the calls. And, he was the guy behind the camera when we were filming our 2 DVDs.
Right.
And the video editing. And, so those 3 together, they come up with some great ideas, and they've taken it real far with the company, but they also kind of butt heads a little bit. And so, it'll be like, well, I've got this idea over here, and well, we were thinking about this idea over there. Yeah. And so it's kind of funny how the cars, they love to have that control over what they're doing, but you put 3 of them together, and they all want to have that control over what they're doing. And it's all a great time. And don't mind me, I love teasing a little bit.
Right.
Because I know they're going to listen in on this podcast episode, and they're going to hear that, and I'm going to be over there in the corner with my shit-eating grin on and being like, yep.
Perfect. Yeah, I mean, I think that's the first time I've ever heard of, a dad and 2 sons being in the same room and there being, an argument or something. I'm sure.
Yeah. That's never happened before.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Nice. Actually, yeah, I just placed my order for the Mo Kraken because we're going to be doing a Goose Call episode here in a week or 2. Correct?
Oh yeah, and of course, looking forward to that. And it's one of those things where, to try and crunch together everything about duck calling and calls and techniques and skills and history and blah, blah, blah. And then to also cram in all of that on the Goose Call side.
Yeah.
It's like how we were talking, dude. I mean, it just can't be done within one episode.
No, I don't have the money for the hosting services, and then there's not enough time that our wives or girlfriends would let us talk about that
stuff. That's right. And so, it's all good. And now one other thing about Grit Pack Calls. So it's kind of a little backstory to, the way the company got its name. And so this is back when Teddy Carr was a younger man, and they were always into deer hunting. It was deer hunting first. I mean, I'm sure that's how a lot of people get into the hunting sport, whether, and so Teddy Carr and his buddies, they would run around over here in the Civil War, heart of the Civil War area in Central Virginia. You've got a lot of places, a lot of woods, a lot of battlefields. And Teddy Carr and his buddies would go hunting. If they wanted to go hunting, they would go hunting, whether it was left, right, north, south, east, wherever. They would go and they'd mop up, They would mop up on their deer. And so they were sitting at a gas station, and they just got done hunting in the morning, and Teddy's dad, the king of the Carr clan, as I like to call him, he's the kind of guy that he'll look at you in the eyes through your soul and look at what's behind you, and you'll feel it the whole way. But so he comes up and he's like, well, what are y'all grits doing? And they called them the grits because they would go out whether it was foggy, rainy, freezing, and they would get out and get it done. If you look up the definition, grit, it's like something like against all odds, perfecting your craft. And like I could go on and on and on into it. It's actually on our website.
Yeah.
But it's pretty crazy. It's like, when nobody else can man up and get it done, if you have grit, you can get it done. And so he Teddy's like, you want to go and do a deer drive with us, Pops? And he goes, I wouldn't be caught hunting with you grits if it was the last deer on this planet. And so Justin and Teddy are sitting there trying to think up of a name, and John is overseas in one of his tours. He's a veteran of the Marine Corps, and they're coming up, bouncing ideas and whatnot. And Teddy goes, I got it. Justin goes, what do you got? He goes, Grip Pack Calls. Justin goes, Grip Pack Calls. Yeah, you could go GP Calls. Yeah. Teddy goes, GP Calls. Yeah. And Justin goes, well, you got to run it by John, because John is he heads that up. Like he's, the names of the calls. Juck will design the calls. John will name them. And then, Teddy will head that up of making them, right?
Right.
And we all help each other out too, but that's like the general dynamic right there. So Teddy calls them up and he tells them, Grip Pack Calls, and there's silence on the phone. John goes, I effing love it. Just right there, boom, Grip Pack Calls. And I believe that was about 4 years ago.
Wow.
Okay. And so, this, it might be 3 years ago. It feels like we're on our fourth year of operation. And so, yeah, right then and there, some Grip Pack knowledge on you.
Man, it's so crazy to me that literally, I think Thursday, I was making a cold call to an outfitter on the East Coast that I had heard somebody had some success with, to talk about some ideas with, and then next thing I know, I'm talking to the face of the company. Is that what you call yourself? The face of the company.
Yeah, that's one of the titles I have. That's not owner. Yep.
Yeah. Well, should we get down into duck calls?
I could talk about duck for quite a long time, so let's get to it.
I think it's important to, I remember when I was picking out my first call and I was looking at a whole wall of, I think I was at Gander Mountain looking this stuff up, and I was, I didn't know what was what. I said, okay, there's a Mallard Hen Call, there's a wood duck call, there's a blue-winged teal call. Oh, crap, I don't know. I guess I'm going to be hunting mallards. I guess I'll pick out that Mallard Hen Call. And I think it's a good, start to talk about, how there's actually, these different, species calls, and then how the one true call that we only really need is, we only need the Mallard Call for the most part. But what do y'all make?
So as far as duck calls go, we have three types. They're all Mallard calls. There is plans and operation for, what we're going to do with like a whistle or a teal call. Now, as far as the Mallard calls, like I said, we have three of those. And then we also have our fourth call, which is a wood duck call. A little, wood splitter is what we call it. It's a polycarbonate call. And as far as the Mallard calls go, we have acrylic calls, and we have some hybrids where it's either a cocobolo or a bird's eye maple or an edge and acrylic, wooden and acrylic. And we also have, in one of our duck calls, we have some that come in acrylic, and we have some that just come all out in wood, whether it's bow coat or if it's edge. And we mess around majority with single reeds. And
okay.
So we have, and then we also have a couple double reeds. And, we have the Trickster, which is like a swamp timber call. It's a single reed. All right. It's got a short barrel on it. You can get real down and nasty with it. Good high end, good low end, pretty much your finesse type of call. Do all the, Cajun squeals and bouncing hens. And
so for those guys that aren't listening, I mean, you've already talked about two things that I think are extremely important that, a lot of us that have been hunting for a while, we know what they mean, but they don't. Let's talk about, the three component or the different components of the duck call, and then talk about the difference between the single reed and the double reed. And then maybe we'll touch on, whether or not you ought to start out with a double reed, or if you should, try your hand at that single reed when you're first starting out.
Gotcha. Yeah. What it all starts with is when you're looking at a call, all right, and then when you pick it up, there's one end that if you blow through, it'll make noise. And one end, it won't. So once you get that placed right, where you hold the duck call is called the insert. All right. And the insert, basically, duck calls, if you think about it, are a two-piece design. You have the insert that goes into the piece that you put your lips on and blow through to make the sound of a quack. All right. Or at least try to, right?
Right. Yeah, we all know that.
So on the insert, which is the piece you are holding onto with your hand, the part of it that goes into the barrel has a soundboard or a tone board, and a reed, a Nylar reed, lays on top of that. All right. And then there's a cork or rubber wedge that holds that reed in place. And then that thus is the four components of a duck call. You have your insert, you have your reed, your wedge, and your barrel.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note that a duck call is very similar to a musical instrument. You can play with all the different parts of all those four things that he just talked about and create a different sound and whatnot. And then there's a lot of duck call companies out there that they turn the barrels and they turn the inserts, but they use a similar gut system, or they use just a prefabricated gut system. Y'all don't do that.
No, we're all, from the mad mind of the cars, and there's been a couple calls where I've helped out with and designing and whatnot, but it's mainly Justin Carr that takes care of all of that, and as a team we all bounce ideas off. I know with our newest duck call, the Nitty Gritty, which we offer in a double reed or a single reed, the design of how it looks, John was very specific on how he wanted it to look with the engraving. And then as far as with how it sounded, me and Justin I was literally sitting right there with him, and he was on the lathe, and he would, burn and turn and hand it to me, and whack, whack, whack. And he's like, a little bit on that. Yeah, that right there. I tell you what, you can flip it over. Boom, you would have something there. He'd burn and turn on it. Try it now. Wah, 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 wah. It's just almost there. He's like, well, I kind of like, and just kind of bouncing. It took us about 9 hours. It could have even have been more. It felt like we were in that shop forever, and finally got it to where we wanted it.
Just a funny mental image just cranks in my head of like someone trying to make a violin in the shop and whatnot. And then I see, you're talking about, musical instruments. A duck call is literally a musical instrument. And then you got the violin guy. It's just a funny parallel there,
Well, and I'm sure you can agree to this. There's been times in the blind where there ain't nothing flying and it's boring. You're waiting on ducks. There's always that one guy who always pulls out a call, and he always doesn't make it sound like a duck on purpose to. And yes, it is very much a musical instrument where you can, get different sounds and whatnot on it. And that goes a lot into how to operate the call. There's different sounds you can make in on it to do your different types of multiple tone quacks, Cajun squeal, all that stuff.
Now, I headed back up to Nebraska this weekend, so I had a few hours on my hands, and I listened to an interview with you on Rutten River Pursuits.
They're good guys out there.
They are, and I tell you what, I hit that subscribe button for certain after I listened to the episode with you, and I was like, it's so funny. There's all these podcasts out there, and there's no way you can find them all. Unless you get exposed to them in one way or the other.
Yes, sir.
But I definitely hit subscribe there. That's a good bunch of guys, it seems like. And I listened to the interview that they had with you, and there was a lot of things on there that are not only new to me, but there were some things that I definitely wanted to pick your brain about. But we'll get on to that here in a second. But the first thing that I wanted to talk to you about is the first piece of advice I got for picking out a duck call was, hey, you a new duck hunter? Yeah, I am. Okay, go get yourself a double reed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I hear that all the time too. Yep.
All right. Go ahead.
So here's the whole thing about it. And this is a stereotype that comes with the double read or even the triple read. You know, there's a calling company out there that has a triple read. All right. And so whether it's single read, double read, triple read, old school, new school, feeding chuckle shaker, or a cut down call, I always recommend go with what you like. Like it's just like picking out a fish and lure. If it catches your eye, then you already like that more than another one. All right. You have two calls that somebody says, well, you need that one, but you like the other call more, and you get the one that didn't catch your eye. It's all confidence, and it's all like, you know, if you like something, you're going to be more comfortable with it. If you're comfortable with it, you're going to be more confident with it. If you're more confident with it, it's going to show when you operate that.
Yeah, look good, feel good, play good, right?
Yeah. So back to where we were at. A double read, everybody says, is easier to learn on. Now, here's the problem with that. In my opinion, they always say you start out with a double read and then you move on to a single read. And then once you get on that single read, you'll be good to go because single reads are hard to blow. Well, what you in turn do is you train your muscle memory and your mechanics to learn how to do it on a double read. Guess what happens when you pick up a single read? You got to train your muscle memory and mechanics all over again. Why wouldn't you just start out the right way? And I don't want to say the right way because I do use double reads too. And it's what I'm getting at is not so much, once again, in my opinion, easier. It's just right settings and right situations to pick up a single read on my lanyard and give a comeback call to a mallard, or pick up that double read and do a nice, soft, deep, subtle feeding chuckle as they're easing on into the decoys.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And so, you know, but yeah. And then you tie in grip pack calls with that. We design all of our calls, whether they're single reads or double reads, to be user friendly. So a lot of people pick up our single reads and they say, man, that blows as easy as a double read. Man, well, you know, we designed it to do that.
Yeah. I was gonna say you sent me a what is it, like 15 videos of you just blowing a duck call, and
Yep.
you know, I got this new baby that it was just born, and you know, I've been thinking about, you know, what would be a good, like, you know, memento to that, and I'm gonna be like I think I'm gonna get us like matching, you know, duck calls, and you know, she's gonna be picking up a duck call here in about 18 months, I do believe. Because I just want to hang out. I don't want to be calling in ducks. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, that the first thing that, you know, the claim here that I keep seeing and is, you know, and that you keep talking to me about it, and it's like, hey, like this is the easiest single read to pick up and, you know, just blow on and be able to produce sounds. And I wanted to kind of dispel, you know, after I've blown, you know, double reads and I've blown single reads, and yeah, you're right. It's a lot harder to, you know, tone yourself back down to a single read and get used to it. If you just blow that, you know, that double read for a while, why not, you know, make the investment and learn how to blow a call right? So.
Yeah, and you know, that's the whole thing about it is I always thought, well, why would you make it twice as hard on you? You know, when it's like, all right, so you learn how to do it on a double read, and then now you got to learn how to do it on a single read. Anybody who picks up a single read first and learns how to do it can then pick up a double read and tear into it.
Right.
You know,
but not vice versa. Not vice versa.
And it always seems to be like that, you know. And so it's just one of those things where, once again, the end all to that discussion is if I walk into a store, all right, and there's 5 duck calls right there on the wall, and one of them catches my eye, and I'm like, oh, dude, that looks cool. Man, I just really, really like it. And even color, you know, I mean, it all goes into it. If I get that one, I'm going to have more confidence in myself. And that's, I mean, I tell everybody, whether it's clients with the outfitter or just buddies, whether it's what type of choke tube should I use? Well, do your research. And I really like this pattern master type, or I really like this Kicks or this Carlson's or whatever. Whatever your research and tells you to like, go with that one, because you're going to have more confidence in it. And you're going to, like, you get the gun that you like and the choke tube that you like and the bullets that you like. My personal example, I shoot a Benelli Super Black Eagle 2. All right. I've got a Pattern Master choke tube in it, and I shoot 3.5-inch heavy metal number 2s, whether it's at teal or at late season geese. I'm going to raise up, and I'm going to have that much more confidence in smoking that bird.
Yeah.
Versus if I had a different brand shotgun, a different brand choke tube, and a different brand bullet.
Yeah, I don't even know how I would do, because I've been shooting the same gun since I was like 12, and I've been shooting the same ammo, number 2s. But I mean, there's one particular hole that I do hunt down in Oklahoma where I put the the 6s in, or just during teal season at least, because it's about a 10-yard shot when you see them drop in. But yeah, I shoot number 2s all season. So.
Oh yeah. And so you yourself could say right now, like, dude, if I handed you my gun and said, rip into these birds, it'd be totally different in your confidence level or your comfort level, or not anything to do with your skill.
Right.
But it's like, dude, this isn't my gun. I've been shooting my gun for dang near all my waterfowl hunting career,
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And that goes with decoys too. If you like this brand and you're using these brands instead, then you're going to be like, man, I tell you what, man, if we had them avians out, we would have been smoking birds. Or, oh man, I crush them over, homemade silhouettes, Yep.
Oh yeah. My favorite thing is like, okay, how many decoy companies are out there? You times that by how many? Times that by how many customers they have, and that's how many different opinions you have on decoys and decoy spreads. And but yeah, I mean, to get back to the calling, so now we've covered a good basis of the general makeup of. I guess, should we cover the different materials before we head into some duck vocabulary?
Oh, absolutely, yes. So there's numerous types of a lot of people, they go in and they'll see calls in certain price ranges. We'll let them know what the call's made out of. All right. And I'm sure I'm not going to list them all.
No. Because
there's a lot of it out there. But so you've got your polycarbonate or your plastic or your mold injected material, which is what you'll see when you go in there, and you've got calls that are packaged in that plastic with the company name on them, bright colors, shelves, in the bright colors on the shelf that you can touch and pick up and say, oh wow, well this one $20 to $40 price range. All right, nothing wrong with those calls. All right, all calls are designed to sound like a bird. All right, some are easier, some are harder, some are bigger, some are smaller. All right, now you've also got your wooden calls, which will run you in like a $40 to $80 price range, or even more expensive. All right, now a big popular one is Cocoa Bala. All right, you've got your bird's eye maple wood. All right, you got numerous amount of burls out there, cherry burl, rosewood, whatever. All right, you've got hedge is really, really popular right now. A lot of call companies are using hedge. All right, and you got bow coat, which is like almost as dark as a Cocoa Bala, nice hard density. A lot of people like Cocoa Bala because it's real hard, dense wood. And the more moisture that's put into it, the more seasoned it'll be. Mm-hmm. And so it's all, what you fancy and, what you like. Now, while we're on it, wooden calls, a lot of people say, well, they're a lot quieter. It's not really a quiet thing, louder or quieter, but they are they do tend to be softer in pitch, a little bit softer. You know, you can really wail into them and get them loud, but you can also, it'll help you be softer. And in turn, I guess you could say quieter, which you know all about, you know, you know, being nice and quiet on a wooden call. You know, a lot of people have different.
Yeah, I think a lot of new guys, when I let a lot of new guys like pick up my call and blow into it, you know, and I don't even know what it's made out of. It's one of them old mid-'90s Duck Commander ones, the originals.
Gotcha.
I don't know what it's made out of. I know that if I push my my fingernail into it nice and hard enough, it'll make a nice scratch on it. It's broken not only by me, but probably by about 3 or 4 users before me. But the guys that pick up that call, they blow into it and they say, "Wow, man, this is like I can't make my call sound like this." And I think, is it true that with wooden calls there is a little bit of a break-in period for sure?
Oh yeah. You know, there's you know, you can get it fresh out of the, you know, off of the line and the tuning table, then it'll sound one way, and then you can break it in and it'll sound completely different. And, you know, it's just one of those things where you're talking old school Olds or, you know, like a Yetson Sure Shot, like those, you know, are calls that I grew up, you know, using when I was younger, because those are the calls that were popular back in the day when my dad was, you know, our age doing it.
Right.
You know, a call you would get for $12.50 that are now worth $212.50 because they're valuable. You know?
Right.
But oh yeah, and you know, that's one of the things that's really nice about those wooden finish calls is, you know, they kind of get into, you know, I've always heard a lot of buddies, man, when I bought this Cocoa Ball call, I don't know, man, but now, man, it's my go-to. Or, you know, or the opposite. Man, I really like this call when I bought it, but now I won't even shake a stick at it. You know?
Yeah, and I think I'm almost positive of it, but wooden calls definitely take a little bit more cleaning uptake and whatnot than your polycarb or your, you know, your ceramic and all that stuff like that.
Oh yeah, and you know, all calls are built to be able to, you know, take the beating. You know, waterfowl hunting, we're tough on our equipment. Let me tell you, you know, all facts of it, you know. Yeah. And even on the easy hunts, still tough on the equipment. And so it's one of those things where acrylic or plastic, if you leave it in a puddle and then you don't, you know, clean it up, I mean, you might get a little bit of blemish on the band, which is the metal ring where the barrel meets the insert. Some calls have them. Newer edition today's calls don't. But a wooden call, wood will mold. Wood will, you know, kind of, you know, warp. And, you know, it's just one of those things where that happens. And so, you do have to take extra care of them.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure my call like sat in a tackle box for 12 years, and I'm not sure. I think that's what maybe.
I know what you're doing while you're out bass fishing. Oh, look, there's your duck now.
Oh yeah. Well, I think we could probably talk about materials and the history of duck calls all day long, which might be a great episode all on its own. But
Yep.
What do you? Should we start?
But yeah, there is the acrylic, and then there's, you know, ivory and micarta and blah blah blah. But you're absolutely right.
I think I saw
you know,
some metal ones earlier too. So yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, down in Tennessee, there's the Reelfoot Lake. They would use metal reeds or like a metal soundboard. And there's a call company out right now that's relatively new that's also doing that as well. And like you just said, dude, we could go on and on and on about all aspects, which we can do in future episodes. But yeah, man, it's pretty amazing. And how many different material. I mean, there's even a guy out there doing deer antlers.
Oh, yeah.
Out of calls.
Absolutely. Yeah. Sure. Sure. As always, this episode is brought to you in part by High Prairie Sportsmen, a group of conservation-minded outdoorsmen and women who have a lot of great content over on YouTube. Just go search for High Prairie Sportsmen over there, and you'll be entertained for hours, and you might even learn something. They're very close friends of the show, and without them, a lot of this stuff wouldn't be possible. Okay, back to the show. But, well, I don't know if you have a call near you or not, or if you want to just help me out with the voice and whatnot. But should we talk about a little bit of duck vocabulary? Maybe some of the basics that go into the different types of. Oh, I hear him. I didn't figure you wouldn't have a duck call around you. I just didn't want to press you into it. But
nah, me have a duck call around me? Nah.
But should we talk about some of the basics that we need to know before we head out there? And I think it's important to say that if you're listening to this episode and it's a week from the duck season, you have a lot of time in your truck that you have to spend to get ready to go here.
Yep. If it's something where you've got a time constraint, then either go out there and pick up one of those feed and chuckle shakers or
buy a jerk rig, right?
It's like one. Yeah, exactly. You can be the guy on the jerk cord or the guy with the goose flag. Yep.
Yeah.
So you got a bunch of different things with the ducks. Not as vast as a goose vocabulary goes, as a Canada goose, but a lot of people think, well, a duck just quacks. Very true, but it also does a couple other things, and there's a lot of tones and pitches, and I like to say patterns that they do when they're communicating with each other. And so I don't know how this is going to sound over. I'll do a quick little test, and you just let me know if I need to back up or
all right, we'll
get closer into the phone. But here's a quack. All right.
That sounded great.
Awesome. So now there's like a short little, like, I'm relaxed quack, like, which is what I was just doing. There's a dragged out quack. All right. There's little clucks. All right. So, a lot of people will say, well, I thought a duck just quacks. Well, they quack differently. And, there's raspy, old-sounding mallards. There's younger, high-pitched sounding mallards. There's I'm having a good time, I'm nice and lazy in the marsh. Repetition of quacks. There's I'm getting a little anxious and I'm right about to get up and fly quack. You know what I mean? There's a whole bunch of stuff going on where you could kind of screw yourself up because, let's be honest, it's all about being as natural as possible. You're not trying to sound like a duck hunter, a human using a duck call. You're trying to sound like a duck.
I was going to say, yeah, there's a big difference between all the sounds that we make out there and then, the second, I think the most popular call in the marsh is the duck hunter blowing a duck call marsh, so I think that's the most popular call out there. But like you're saying, yeah, I mean, different we all sound a little bit different, and so do the ducks.
Oh yeah, and and even getting into it before all of that, there's a guy who is like, all right, well, I know what I need to do, all right, and this will kind of sound a little far-fetched. First of all, you got to be where the ducks want to be, all right. If you're not, I always said, okay, and this is a Travis Stout saying right here for you, all right. I'm gonna throw some knowledge. I'm gonna put it down. You can pick it up and run with it. You can leave where it lays, all right. If you're not where a duck wants to be, there is nothing you can do on God's green earth that'll make that duck want to be where you are if it doesn't want to be there. Now, vice versa. Well, explaining that, you're ripping into a call and you're like, man, that duck just won't come over here, or you're jerking that jerk rig, or you're waving that flag, or you're turning the mojo on. If the duck doesn't want to be there, guess what? You're up the creek without a paddle. Now, right. In addition to that, you turn the scale around. If you're where a duck wants to be, there ain't nothing you can do to get him out of there. All right. And I'm sure you've had it happen where you're in the decoys, picking up decoys or whatnot, and a duck comes in and lands 10 feet from you. And you're like, I'm right here. It did not see me, or no, it wanted to be there.
Yeah.
So
it's a terribly frustrating thing to see, actually.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And then you're like, this is why I'm going to go to the Gander Mountain or the Bass Pro Shop and buy me a sling, so I have my gun on my shoulder when I'm in the decoys picking up or doing this, and a duck comes in and lands 10 feet from me.
Oh yeah.
So now with that in mind, first things first, you got to be where a duck kind of wants to be, or as a lot of people say in our community, on the X. Once you're there, then you can use these tools that we call duck calls to work and communicate with the birds. All right. And that right there, not a lot of people get that. You know, I've had people out there where they're just screaming on the calls, and I'm like, well, the duck didn't want it. So, you know, now you're educating birds, and you know, the ducks have it easy enough with refuges and all these regulations. And, you know, we can't shoot them in the springtime on the migration back up anymore. We only get 60 days or 97 days, depending on what flyway you're on, to hunt them. You know, last thing you want to do is educate them even more.
Right. Right.
So
there's enough public land out there for them to get educated on, with, you know, getting shot at about 50 yards away. And
Yep. And so now, real quick. So you have that quack I was just telling you about.
So is that the first thing we need to learn? Is the quack?
You know, there's two things that are good to start on. Is quack, but I actually like to have people, when I'm doing my little seminars at hunting shows and expos, or I've got somebody on FaceTime that bought a call that needs a little help or a little point in the right direction, whatever. You know, I love being a part of that teaching. You know, I like getting them to do the feeding chuckle first. All right. Because that'll be the easiest thing to do. You know, you just have a tick or a hit or, you know, all right. And then once they get that down, it'll, then that'll, like I said earlier, it's all muscle memory, muscle mechanics. Once you get that feeding chuckle down and it sounds like a duck, then your muscle memory is already caught up to sounding like a duck on a quack. A lot of people will pick it up and try to do a quack first, and it'll they'll be like, do I sound like a duck?
Kazooey. Very kazooey.
Yeah. You know, it's like, well, you know, you're almost there. Where, you know, it takes a long time to really learn how to do it if you don't start on the right, like, it's like I'm trying to cross a creek and I'm trying to jump to the middle stone or rock, then hop on the first rock, then on the second rock, then on the middle rock. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, it's one of those things, you know, I guess I've been doing it wrong. So the first thing I do is hey, man, like, this is your first hunt out. Here's a whistle. I teach them the Chicago, and I teach them, you know, the teal peeps. And then and that's, you know, and then the next time they come around and they've bought their own duck call, and I tell them, okay, now just do a couple quacks here and there. And then they're always asking me, hey, man, I can't get the feeding chuckle down. And, you know, they hear all the super sexy competition feeding chuckles, you know, all that stuff.
The machine gun feeding chuckle.
There you go. Yeah. And whereas, like, they're like, hey Ben, you should try that machine gun feeding chuckle. And I'm like, it's not really appropriate for the setting that we're in. I'm just going to give it a couple tick, you know.
Oh, that's very true. I mean, it's like, dude, all right, we have 3.5 dozen decoys out here. And, you know, a machine gun chuckle, the only natural, realistic situation and scenario I've heard a machine gun chuckle by the actual ducks is if I'm sitting at a flooded corn impoundment and there's 1,000 ducks.
Yeah.
And they're all doing that, duck, 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 and it literally sounds like, brrr. I mean, that's and so I'll kind of sit there and say, dude, we got 2.5 dozen decoys out.
Yeah.
It ain't going to sound like that machine gun chuckle.
No. I mean, it's great to show your buddies that and maybe put it in through, into a calling routine and to tick your wife off. But unless you're running 6 dozen, but.
Oh yeah. And, there's more, and like I'll probably get into it when, we do like calling episode number 2 for ducks and like, advanced calling, or, blah, blah, blah. But there's a lot of things that can go into that. And, there has been times where I've used a machine gun chuckle and it's worked. But for the majority, it's kind of like, dude, just put the call down,
Yeah, for sure. So let's get into a few more other things, a couple of the basic vocabulary, and then I want to talk about some surefire calling techniques, how we call with our eyes and as you put it and whatnot. But let's get through some of the vocabulary and we'll move on.
So as far as all that goes, we've talked about the quack and the, shorter quacks or like clucks and the, longer, dragged out, exaggerated quacks. We talked about the feeding chuckles. The only other thing we really need to talk about as far as picking up a duck call, practicing on these methods and going out there and sounding like a duck are the cadences. All right. A lot of people, you might hear on your favorite hunting show, well, I gave him a hail call or I gave him a comeback call. They're all cadences. All right. And, you've got your greeting calls, your comebacks, your hail calls, your Cajun squeals, your bouncing hens. It's all a cadence. And by a cadence, I'm talking a set number of quacks in repetition that go from high, longer notes to shorter, crisper notes. All right. And for example, here's what that's going to sound like. All right. And so it's one of those things where muscle memory, proper mechanics, you ain't going to pick up and do a comeback call if you don't know how to do a quack.
I would say if this is your first, if you ain't ever been duck hunting before and you're listening to this, trying to figure out, how it's going to go down, you probably don't have much business doing a hail or a comeback call. Am I wrong with that? Am I wrong?
And it's one of those things where it's all confidence, and this will kind of get us into the next topic you wanted to talk about, like how you were just saying, calling with your eyes. So I'll be honest with you. I'll put the heavy lanyard down for a minute. So I've heard, now real quick, I myself, people always say, well, how do you blow a duck call? What do you do when you're calling at ducks? I use my eyes. And then they're kind of like, well, you're like blowing into the call, knucklehead. I'm like, yeah, but I'm watching those birds at all times.
Right.
And the birds are going to tell you what to do. You're learning how to speak duck with the duck call. You got to use your eyes to learn how to understand duck through their communication back. It'll be mainly body language, but it'll also, I've had a hen mallard quack back at me, and I'll quack at her, and she'll quack at me, and I'll quack at her, blah, blah, blah. However, what we were just talking about right then and there, if somebody should pick up a call and do that call, all right, I've seen world champs that sound amazing on the call mess up and not do the right thing at the right time. And I've heard people where you want to smack that call out of their hands and tell them to sit down and get ready to shoot. Know exactly when to hit a call, a certain call, at the right time, and sound like others would say complete garbage, but turn that group of birds around and get them feet down, guns up in the decoys. Oh. And so, what I'm getting at Yeah, what I'm getting at is you don't need to be the world's greatest duck caller to kill ducks by using a duck call. You just got to start learning how to read the birds. And my best advice with that, of course, is through experience, but I don't try to think about it. I just listen to my gut.
Right.
You know, your head's going to lie to you.
Yeah, your head's going to tell you do the hail call, do the comeback call.
Oh,
hey, they're still 80 yards out. Do the comeback call again. But
and your heart's going to lie to you too, man. Your heart's going to say all you got to do is call her. Just give her a call, and she'll answer. And your heart will lead you wrong too, but your gut never lies because your gut's hungry. You know, so that turns into a reaction. You like my little metaphor there. Yeah. That turns into the reaction. It's all reactions. All right. And so, you know, there's subtle little hints that a duck will do.
Yeah.
For example, if he's locked up, floating right into the decoys, then whatever you're doing on the duck call, keep on doing it. Keep on doing it. Don't stop. Because as soon as you stop, they're going to...
That leads me to another thing that I wanted to ask you about that I heard when you were talking to Uncle Catfish and them on Rutten River. And, you know, so many times, hey, shut up. They're coming in already. Okay. All right, fine. Shut up. And then they break off.
Yep.
And I'm thinking, man, okay. What happened?
You know, if you know, we're sitting there having a good time. And actually, I got Uncle Catfish here with me. I'll let him say it. Well, brother, let me tell you, if you know, you're sitting in the goose blind, I love doing that impersonation of him. He's a great guy. You know,
that is the raspiest voice I've ever heard. He's yelled at a lot of people in his life. I'm certain of it.
So it's funny because at the hunting shows, you know, it'll be like one of those things where with a podcast, it's like, you know, like, will you get noticed by visual? Maybe, maybe not. But we're sitting there, and me and Uncle Catfish are talking, and he goes, well, Travis, I don't really know what you're talking about right here. And a guy just, like, turns around, and he goes, you're Uncle Catfish. And he's, you know, it's just
break
like,
his dang neck after he hears him, yeah.
So, but, you know, there's a lot of things where if you're not doing anything and they're coming in, why would you pick up a call and start whack, 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 whack? They're doing it on their own. Let them do it.
That is so funny, you know? That you said that. Yeah. You know, if you're just sitting there, you're messing around with your buddies, you know, you mess around with your Facebook, and next thing you know, you got 6 birds on the deck. Like, you know, I guess you ain't got to call. Your spread's good enough. Your hide's good enough. Like, don't worry about calling.
Yeah, but exactly. You know, now, say that same example. They're on the deck, wings cupped up. They are toting pumpkins in. All right. And then all of a sudden they kind of not really flare, which for anybody out there, when a duck hunter says flare, it's like, hey, that duck was coming in. And all of a sudden it's like, holy crap, I don't want anything to do with you. And he pitches out wide and you hear, and it's like, what happened? That's a flare. But like, let's just say they're easing in and then they kind of don't really finish right. Right there, I would hit them with a call. All right. And it's one of those things where your gut feeling's going to tell you, all right, hit them with a little small cadence, little whack, 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 or hit them with a little beating chuckle, duck, 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 duck. Right there at that reaction that they had, they are screaming at you, hey, we were just doing it right, but we stopped doing it right. Tell us that we were correct in doing it right by speaking our duck language. You know what I mean?
Right,
That's like, you know, and so, you know, hit them with a comeback call or hit them with a soft little subtle quack. Now, if they're circling around and they're going away, hence the name comeback call, more times than not, it works to get them to come back. And so that's where you would do that. But if it's something where they're kind of just pitching out a little bit and you want to get them back in tight and they're not leaving you, just hit them with a soft little feeding chuckle or a little quack, and that'll keep them honest. All right. And, but yeah, they're like, you know, just going out there and doing it. The best way to learn is to fail. And that experience right there is worth its weight in gold, just like how a well-trained lab is. You know what I mean? It's just right there with you.
Yep. I would say, okay, so this is my next question then.
You got it?
All right. You got little Travis Jr. You can start it all over again.
Oh God.
What do you get him into? You know, what do you tell him? Hey, buy yourself a single read. Work on this. You know, hey, only make the kids call when you're out there. Like, you know what I mean? What do you tell a new guy that has, hey, this guy's never called to a duck before? What's your advice to him when he's got, you know, maybe he's got $100 burning in his pocket for a duck call and wants to know, what do I listen to get ready in the off season? I've got 4 months left now that it's, you know, July or whatever, you know, and how do I get ready for the season?
So, you know, for people who don't have access to the outdoors, is like I'm over here. I grew up in a stone's throw from the Potomac River. All right, the quote unquote mighty Potomac, one of the, you know, sought after waterfowl destinations that's not really, you know, like advertised. All right, I could go to the river and listen to some ducks sitting there feeding and quacking, and ducks pitching into them, and that old boss hen Susie just wailing back at them. Or geese. I could go to one of the park ponds and listen to geese just be as vocal as can be and hear stuff like, did a goose just make that noise? I can't believe it, you know. Now, that by far is the best way to go out there. As far as the $100 burning a hole in your pocket, I would, of course, recommend getting a duck call that catches your eye, one that you like. But even before that, if you have buddies that have calls and they can steer you in the right direction, cool. If you don't, you go to a store, and with the high-end acrylic calls, you can ask to try them out. Even on top of that, dude, go to a hunting expo. You've got all the top-end call companies out there, like the Harrisburg Sports Show, the Great American Outdoor Show, the biggest hunting and fishing expo in the country, every February out in Pennsylvania. Go over there. You've got all the top dogs. You could come there and talk to me, and I'll have you try out 100 different duck calls and give you pointers. All that. You could buy DVDs. You could go on YouTube. YouTube is great for people who don't have like a pond next to their house that always holds birds that they can listen to. You go on YouTube and put in the search bar, how to blow a duck call, and you've got it right there. You know, oh, this is how you do it, and you mimic it. Now, the bottom line to this, and I tell everybody, you've heard me say it before in this conversation, there's muscle memory and teaching the mechanics. You're not going to pick up a duck call and sound like a duck immediately. You're going to have to let your muscle memory catch up and learn what to do. Once it does, it'll be like a snap of a finger, and you'll be like, holy crap, I actually sound like half a duck.
Right.
But, you know, that's just the whole thing. And so I guess what I'm getting at is the best thing to do is to just do it.
And, okay, hey, here's another question for you that I have. Left hand, right hand?
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter? What's your preference? Nah. Because I was told initially, you know, I use my trigger finger, you know, so that way I can lift my gun up with the heavy portion because I shoot a pump. That way I can lift the gun up. But what hand should I be practicing with, you know?
You know, it's one of those things where looking back on it with, you know, me in the blind, I pretty much, you know, grab whichever call's available and easiest for, you know, each hand. You know, that's like, you know, because like I said, there's very, very precise moments when you need to hit a duck with a certain call. and it's like, ooh, 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 ooh. You know, everybody hears that noise right there in a duck blind, ooh, 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 ooh. You know, and you're reaching for a call, and, you know, I may have my coffee cup thermos in my left hand, and I'll pick it up with my right hand. I'm right-handed, so I guess that's the natural way to do it. When I'm on a calling competition stage, I'm using both hands because it's just, you know, that form you want. You know, it's just one of those things where, and this is what a lot of beginners will get messed up with, is they see someone who's advanced at calling using their hands, and their hands is opening up and closing and opening up and closing. And they think they need to start getting those spirit fingers out and start wiggling their fingers, and that's going to make it sound like a quack. When I'm teaching people how to pick up a duck call and sound like a duck for the first time, I say, don't even think about moving your hands. Just pick it up and blow into it. And so, you know,
you play second, correct? Is that second?
So my calling competition career. So I did a bunch of Ducks Unlimited youth calling competitions back in the 90s. I took a bunch of first places with goose and duck. Then I kind of dropped off of that scene and just hunted. I just wanted to hunt. Mm-hmm. Now, when I was in with Grip Pack Calls, they're like, dude, you ever do a duck calling competition? I'm like, oh, yeah, man, I appreciate that, man. That's a compliment, man. I'll tell you what. And they're like, no, dude, seriously, like, you got to do these. Looking back on it, I wish I would have stayed with it because it's so competitive. But so with Grip Pack Calls, I've placed second place 3 times in a row in the Virginia State calling competition. And so it's like one of those things where, you know, it's like, man, 3 times in a row, second place. Man, who do I got to talk to get first? But at the same time, I want to, you know, like, you know, it's like, dude, that's nothing to shake a stick at. Like, these guys are so good at what they do. It's hard to even place on a duck calling competition. You know, when I first got back into the scene, I didn't even place. You know, it's like, man, good grief, this is unbelievable how the game has changed. And so, but yeah, you know, it's just one of those things where it's getting out there and doing it. And, yeah, so pretty cool to be second place 3 times in a row. This past year, the year before, and the year before that. And, who knows? I got a couple tricks up my sleeve this coming year to see what's going on.
Is the same guy beat you all 3 times, or was it different guys?
Different guys. Twice it was the same guy. And, this guy in particular, he's won them more times than you can even think.
Yeah. Okay.
And then the other guy actually competed with that first guy, and they would bounce back and forth winning it. And so basically, the guy who beat me once moved down to North Carolina for a couple years. And then when he came back, you know, he took it from me this past year. And, you know, it's like, I could understand if it's like, all right, you lost by 25, 40 points. All right, I got some work I got to do. Man, when you lose by just a couple points, it's like, man, I had your back up against the ropes, dude.
Right. That's something that, yeah.
You know, and so it's just one of those things where it's a great time out there. You know, I'll mess around with the goose calling competitions. That's a whole different beast. You know, and it's, you know, the vast vocabulary of a goose, all right, versus a duck call taking it to the limit. You know, it's like that right there is what they're looking for in a duck calling competition, is taking that call to the limit without having any mishaps. And so, you know, once you get perfect with that call, all right, like this past a couple years, me in first and third place and fourth place, all perfect routines, solid routines, but who was just a little bit louder, who did a 31-note hail call instead of a 30-note hail call. You know, just those small little things. And I've judged competitions too. And, a lot of people think, sitting in the audience, well, dang, that guy should have won. Oh, well, man, I'll tell you what, once you get in the judging table and you don't see it, you just use your ears, that's completely different to, being in the audience and being like, man, how could he have won? You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's pretty wild.
I do want to have you know. I do want to have you know. I've won a duck call competition.
Oh, my man.
Yeah, there was two of us competing at the local the Ducks Unlimited chapter in where was it? It was in Oklahoma. Oh, it was two little kids judging. It was nothing to be proud. But I did win a Pacific Calls custom Ducks Unlimited call out of it. But it was like the little kids were judging us, and I think I pandered to them to win. It wasn't fair. So,
dude, well, I tell you what, give yourself some credit right there, because that is some tough stuff to be able to get up on stage and do it. And, it's just one of those things where,
well, you're right.
People ask me, dude, it's like, that ain't nothing to shake a stick at.
Well, and, I think it's important to talk about that, too, because, you just said, hey, come over to my booth at the Great American Outdoors, what is it, the Ghost?
Yeah.
And, you said, come over to my booth. I tell you what, man, I got all the confidence in the world. I really ain't shy of nobody, but I'm going to have a kind of hard time coming up to you and blowing your duck call that you turned for weeks and, like, really giving it a good show and be like, yeah, Like, it's one of those things.
What do you think of this quack right here? Yeah.
Yeah, and you're going to look at me like, oh, hey, bro, that's not how you blow that. And I'm going to think to myself, oh, damn it. Like, and then, I'm just going to buy it out of, like, shame. Like, of course, I'm going to go work on this. I'll see you in, like, 4 years. But
well, we have it all the time, dude, with, people who will sit there and, walking down the aisles and, whether it's one of our other pro staffers, Zane, all right, he is nuts on a goose call. I mean, people will say, Travis, you're amazing on a goose call. And I'll be like, yeah, I can sound like 5 or 6 or 7 different geese at the same time. Zane sounds like 25 different geese at the same time. It's unbelievable. We'll have people walking by and say, hey, how's it going? What are you guys all about? And I'll say, well, try out these calls. And they'll be like, nah, man, I'm good. And then they'll hear Zane on the other side of the booth helping somebody else out. And Zane's just ripping into a goose call. And they'll be like, I want that call. You know what I mean?
And you're like, hey, it's the same call. My bad. Like,
yeah. It's like, well, are you sure you don't want to try it? Nah, I'm good. But that call sounds really good, so I want that call, which is the BMO crack.
So what you're saying is Zane is going to be on the next episode as well with the goose calls. No.
Oh yeah, we can definitely set that up. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, man, he is unreal as far as that goes. He knows who the king is when it comes to the duck call, but no, I'm joking. He sounds awesome on a duck call too. And me and him actually feed off of each other real well when we're out hunting, because he's got a totally different mindset and like style with his calling, and I've got my own. But at the same time, like, we're both reading the birds, and if I do one thing, he knows, okay, Travis just hit him with a 5-note comeback call. If that bird doesn't turn on the 3rd or 4th note, I'm going to hit him with the 7-note. More aggressive comeback call.
He can hit them. It's good when you can play dueling pianos with, I know
yeah, dude. We play some serious chopsticks with them duck calls, dude. Yeah.
Hey, that's the next caveat is, hey, have you ever shot a bird in Kansas before?
Oh, dude, let me tell you. We've been meaning to get out with one of our pro staffers who's out there in Manhattan.
Manhattan?
Over there.
That's where I'm at.
Oh, yeah. Oh, really?
Who's this guy?
Luke Schneider.
Okay, well, man.
Yeah, man, he goes to Kansas State over there. I think he's out of school now, but yeah, man, we need to plan something where I'll bring some of the video footage up, and bring the cameras and we're starting our YouTube webisode series.
Yeah.
And dude, get some footage.
When we get off here, we'll have to talk about this pro staffer in Manhattan, and that's literally where I live. So I have to hook up, and yeah, man, I got some properties out here. We can definitely. I know that the Page Duck Club out here it's always well stocked and beer and bourbon and good food and lots of laughs. So
you had me at hello. Good deal, man. Well, yeah, and same thing with, if you're ever out here. I remember I was listening to one of your guys' episodes, and I think it was your buddy, I want to say Austin. He actually grew up hunting the Potomac River.
He did. Funny enough, so Austin actually he's got some work restrictions right now that he'll be on next week. Actually, we're about halfway through recording next week's episode with him.
Gotcha.
But he grew up all around the country hunting and cut his first waterfowl teeth on the Potomac River, and so. It's one of those things where it's, I have only ever experienced the Southwest and then the Midwest. And so I'm definitely looking to branch out, and I want to get on some sea ducks, some diver ducks, and, hitting up the East Coast life and seeing what everything's about. But, heck, if I got good people around me, we don't even need to shoot a duck. We can just, hang out.
And that's one of the things why I myself have taken liking more towards waterfowl hunting than sitting in a deer stand waiting for a stupid timber goat to walk by you.
Yeah.
Like, don't get me wrong, I'll go out and hunt deer a couple times. I'm absolutely ate up with turkey hunting and upland, but duck hunting, you're sitting there shooting the shit with your buddies. All of a sudden, like we were talking about earlier, ooh, watch them.
Yep.
Well, you think we can do it? You think we can do it? Nah, give them another pass. All right, get them.
Yeah, I totally agree. Totally agree.
Dude.
And it's the best sport to introduce. I've taken people deer hunting for the first time, including my wife. My wife's been both deer hunting with me and duck hunting with me. And I think, even though she shot her own deer the first time, I think that she absolutely enjoyed duck hunting way more, just because she got to drink her coffee and take pictures of the sunrise, But we had some good bonding time, and it's one of those things where you can take a guy out for the first time and say, "Hey, man, I'm sorry we didn't get any ducks. That sucked, but hey, tomorrow we're going to go out again." And it wasn't that big of a, We're talking about hunter. This show is all about hunter recruitment and retention.
Yep,
that's what we're here for, because it's pretty rough to break into waterfowl without a good mentor. And I did that about 5 years ago, and that's the whole genesis of this podcast. So,
well, I tell you, and listening to some of your previous episodes. It's nice when you have a mentor. Like, for example, I had the best mentor any duck hunter, waterfowl hunter could ask for. I had my dad, and he, when I was the age of 4 years old, put a duck call and a goose call in my mouth. I went out with them, and I was the dog when we were shooting geese out in Haymarket. A lot of people have that, shared attribute. You know what I mean? Well, I started out being a dog, all right? And all the way up to, where I was 7, 8 years old shooting a 20 gauge. And my dad said to his buddies, "Hey, ain't nobody picking up their call. Travis is calling." And they'd be like, "Oh, man, you're kidding, man. You're going to flare all the birds." And I did a lot. But I also had them working right. Yeah. And, IDing birds and doing this and that. And, well, you didn't tell me what kind of bird it was before it got in decoy, so you're not allowed to shoot anymore. And I, get all upset about that. Well, that's important. Now people are like, how the heck did you know that those were gadwalls all the way over Chowder? I'm like, well, the way my dad taught me. But what I'm getting at is like how you said in previous episodes, my dad did not have my grandfather be so knowledgeable in the sport. My dad learned from reading hunting books, and, just wanting to do it, which a lot of people in our generation now could do with YouTube, or in the new generation can do with YouTube, or, Outdoor Channel or Pursuit Channel.
Right.
What I mean? Just learning how to do it. And so it's just one of those things where get on into it and join this passion, because there's a reason why all these guys are ate up with it.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. It's not something you just like I'm pretty sure I'm shooting right now 110% success rate with bringing a dude out for his first duck hunt, a guy that shows interest, and then him being, hey dude, I just dropped like $300 on calls and decoys and all this other stuff, like literally the next day. And it's
waders and
man,
gun and bag.
Yeah, I ain't never got a pair. I've never gotten rid of a pair of waders, because every time I buy a new pair, I just patch the heck out of the old ones, because I know I'm bringing somebody out new, and then I just end up giving it to them, and then it's.
So I'm looking forward to a brand new pair of waders when I go out there to Kansas with you. Then,
ooh.
Gotcha.
Yeah, brand new, perhaps a brand new pair of waders that have, they're about 3 years old. Been sitting in my garage, perhaps in my attic. Have a couple burrs in the butt, and but for sure. But all right, man, we should probably wrap this up. I think that was a great introductory duck calling episode, and it sounds like there's a duck calling 2.0 episode at some point in our future here. But for sure, we're going to be talking goose calls here shortly.
Got it, man. Duck calls 101 today, duck call 2.0 coming up. And then, the whole goose calling thing is a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, and hey, I'll tell you, I'll be, full disclosure here. I was talking about to you my turkey hunting skills.
Oh yeah.
My goose calling skills, they're about the same level as my turkey calling skills. So,
dude, I can't wait.
So I'm gonna have the Mo Kraken in hand, and I think that you're just gonna teach me on air. I think for the next episode, I think that'd be good.
Awesome, brother.
All right, man.
Looking forward to it. Hey, thanks again for having me on real quick. For anybody who's interested in GP calls, go to www.gpcalls.com. All right. Give us a like on Facebook at GripPack Calls, and follow us on Instagram at GP_calls. And then if anybody's interested in who this knucklehead is talking here on the phone right now, Travis Stauch, all one word, TravisStauch. Follow me on Instagram, and then also on Facebook. And once again, Ben, I really appreciate you having me on, and looking forward to next episode and getting in on some birds with you. But
absolutely, man. All right, let's sign it off. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Fowl Front Waterfowl Podcast. Please come join us on our Facebook group, the Fowl Front Waterfowl Podcast group, where you can connect with a good group of hunters, because we're all in this together. We need to act like it so that hopefully our great grandkids will be hunting ducks over our favorite public lands. We also ask that you go ahead and give us a written review on iTunes, and give us 5 stars if you think we deserve it. And we really do want to hear back from you so that we can give you the best possible content. And if you get in on that Facebook group, you can get in there and you can ask questions, and you can tell us what you want to hear next, or you can tell us what you don't like, and we'll be sure to tailor things to our listeners. So, all right. Stay safe out there, and we will see you next week.